So I set out to answer the one question that everyone has the most about the Apple Watch Ultra Edition. How long does a battery actually last in real-life GPS mode? So to answer that question, yesterday I embarked on a 70-kilometer, 13,000-foot elevation gain, trail run, hike, whatever you want to call it, through the Alps, Italy, France, to figure out whether or not this thing could actually last that distance, and then whether or not it's suited for it. And in doing so, I discovered a lot of interesting things. Some good and some not so good. Now fear not though, I'm still gonna talk about all like the normal stuff as well, like running and cycling and swimming and all the kind of things that you do with this watch that's not like just purely up in the Alps and stuff like that. Now first up though is the price. The Apple Watch Ultra Edition is $799 US, though it's 999 euros, so just be aware of that. Those prices are basically double what the Apple Watch Series 8 prices are, which is $399 for the base edition. And then if you drop down to the SE, that's $249. So just kind of put things in context. There are a number of hardware differences, but let's start off with the very first one. The case is larger on the Ultra. It's a 49mm case compared to the 45mm on the Series 8. However, the display is actually just a tiny bit bigger than the Series 8. It's really not that much bigger. Instead, it's a lot brighter. It's 2000 nits versus 1000 nits on the Series 8. The next change you'll probably have noticed is, of course, the case itself is designed quite a bit different. On the right-hand side, there are larger buttons and larger digital crown. The reason for those is more easy access with gloves, and then around that is what's called a button guard. That's designed to go ahead and prevent accidental button presses of those buttons, especially if you have gloves on or a coat, jacket, etc. On the other side is the new action button. And that button's designed to basically like instantly trigger a certain action. So you can customize it to, for example, if you press it once, it opens with the workout mode, but in particular, you can choose what exactly to do in the workout mode. You can say, I want to start a run or a particular run workout, whatever activity. And then once in that activity or in that particular app, you can go and customize what happens within the app. Next, note that all models of the Ultra do have cellular or LTE built into them. There's no like two-tier system where there is with, for example, the Series 8. Next, there's the different band or strap options. You've got the Alpine Loop, which is this orange one that you've seen in probably all the ads. It looks amazing. It really is amazing for the most part. And then you've got the Trail Loop, which is like a Velcro-y sort of one. And then the Ocean Loop, which is designed more for the scuba realm, but I mean, you can use it as you see fit. And speaking of like fabric-y sort of things, for a lack of anywhere else to stick it in this review, the Apple Watch Ultra Edition actually comes with like a braided cable, a braided charging cable of sorts. It looks nice. Oh, hey, and a quick note, if you're finding this video interesting and useful, if you give it a like at the bottom, it really does help with this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, let's start talking about the software features and how this all works. Of course, the Ultra runs WatchOS 9. That's what it's preloaded with out of the box. And so there's a bunch of features there. Some of them depend on hardware and some of them are software across all watches. Starting with some of the hardware ones, there's new vehicular crash detection, as well as wrist night temperature. Those are ones that depend on hardware on the Series 8 and the Ultra. And then for wrist-based temperature, it'll go ahead and basically take the temperature at your wrist each night, primarily used for female health tracking. Meanwhile, then you've got WatchOS 9 features that are applicable across the board to WatchOS 9 watches. That includes the multi-sport triathlon mode, includes heart rate zones, includes the ability to edit and create structured workouts, includes running power and running efficiency metrics. And then there are two different pieces of software that are just on the Ultra itself. The first one is a new dive app called Depth. That app is certified to 40 meters. So the app itself is certified to 40 meters, but the watch hardware is certified to 100 meters. I've seen a lot of confusion about that, and they've listed all these waterproofing dive certifications. Then there's also a third-party app as well that Apple is like super tightly partnered with that has much more features than the Depth app. For example, multi-gas support, etc. I didn't have a chance to fit in diving in this time frame, but I do plan a dive trip to be able to test all this out and compare it against some of the other smartwatches out there that do diving. I dive myself, so something I definitely want to dive into a bit more. Get that? Dive into? I didn't even mean to do that, by the way. That was just completely like slip of the tongue. So let's talk about some of the Apple Watch basics from an activity tracking first, and then we'll get into the sports and just keep on like diving deeper and deeper and deeper into this. First off, from an activity tracking standpoint, Apple has a concept called rings. There's these 3 rings, and they basically track move, standing, and your exercise for the day. As you go through your day, you're basically trying to complete that circle on the rings. Now, just check out this animation last night after my hike. Just watch this while I keep on talking. This is absolutely insane. And so there's an entire cult around like closing your rings. And I get it. Like it reminds you kind of constantly to close the rings. And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, you've got an 8-minute walk and you'll finish this ring out. And you're like, I will do this 8-minute walk right now. But all this data is shown not just on the watch itself, but also on the fitness app, which is a companion app on your iPhone. And you can see data for just that day, as well as historical data, how it compares. You can compete against friends. Again, all this stuff hasn't really changed in the Apple landscape in quite a number of years. So if you're familiar with an Apple Watch, it's the same here as well. What has changed though is the sleep tracking in WatchOS 9. So now Apple has sleep tracking, which they've had for a while, but in particular, they now have sleep stage and sleep phase tracking. So that basically tries to track your sleep phases throughout the night. For me, I don't generally look at the accuracy of the sleep phases and sleep stages because the technology to compare that accuracy to in most settings is only about 80% accurate. So that's really not all that accurate. Instead, I look at whether or not it captures my start time and my end time. Those are the two main things I actually care about. And for the most part, it was doing that, but I've seen quirks on a WatchOS 9, including the Ultra, around when you wake up in the morning and then go right back to sleep. So for example, this weekend, I woke up at 8 o'clock and for like 5 minutes, I made sure the kids were all set and then I went back to sleep for 2 more hours. And it just thought I woke up at 8 o'clock and was done with it. Both the Garmin watch on the other wrist, as well as my Whoop band and my Oura ring, all nailed that correctly as 10 something o'clock that I actually woke up at. Now, in that same vein is the wrist-based temperature tracking. As I said earlier, this is available for both men and women, and it basically shows you the difference to the baseline, establishes that baseline over the course of 5 days. For women though, it'll also give you historical ovulation cycle data. So it's not looking like forward-wise predictive. There is some predictive bits in Apple's platform, but that's based on just a manual data entry that you put in there. It's not based on any of the temperature data. So that's different than something like the Whoop band or Oura, which is looking at that temperature data and predicting in the future when your ovulation cycles might happen. I suspect this is something that Apple will do down the road. It makes sense, their competitors are doing it, and certainly adding that wrist-based temperature sensing in there is setting the stage for that. So let's talk sports. We're gonna start basic and get pretty deep pretty quick. So you'll tap that little runner icon, that's the sport basically app, and then from there you can use the scroll wheel or just a touchscreen to fly through and find the sport profile that you want. Once you've done that, you'll see the little triple ... That allows you to get into extended modes of that sport. So for example, you can open up run and you can choose what your goal is. Do you want it to be just an open run or a timed run or a calorie run or a structured workout, etc. And the structured workouts are new here. Within the structured workouts, you can create, 6 by 800. You can basically set the duration of the work interval and you can set the duration of the recovery interval. And then you can set a warm up and a cool down. You go off and do it and it reminds you as you go through each step. Within that workout, in particular run, for example, you'll see running power as well as running efficiency metrics. You also see heart rate zones across the board. The heart rate zones are only configured like globally. There's not one for running or cycling, and most people have different zones for different sports. So that's something that Apple would need to improve upon if they want to get deeper into the sport realm. Next, it's worthwhile noting that on the Ultra, you can configure up to 7 data fields per page. Though one of those is actually the clock, so it's really like 6 data fields. Still, it's something you basically get an extra data field compared to the Series 8. Though you can't configure those data fields on your phone anymore. You used to be able to in iOS 15. In iOS 16, that feature is gone. So you got to do everything on the watch, and it's really cumbersome. Not so much the data field, that's easy, but like creating the structured workouts, giving them names, all these things sort of add up, and none of them are available on the phone to do. Hopefully that's something that returns at some point to iOS 16 and WatchOS 9, because it was pretty handy. Next, before we start the workout using a new Ultra feature, note that there is the multi-sport mode that's been added to WatchOS 9 that's good for triathlons. They featured this in their keynote and talked about how an Ironman competitor could use this mode, the average Ironman competitor could use this mode to go ahead and complete that race. I did use WatchOS 9 earlier this summer to complete a triathlon and had no problems with it. There's both automatic transitions as well as manual transitions. In my case, I used automatic, but now there's manual, so you can do it either way. However, the downside, there's no ability to pair sensors beyond a heart rate sensor. You can put a heart rate chest strap on if you want to, you can pair to that, but you cannot use any sort of cycling power meters or cycling cadence sensor. And again, for the triathlon and cycling crowd, that's like a requirement these days. The vast majority of Ironman athletes especially would have a power meter. Now, with all that, it's time to finally start a workout. You've got two kind of ways you can do that. One, you can do it the old school way, you just tap on the particular workout type into 3, 2, 1, or you could use the precision start. So this allows you to use the action button to open up that workout, and then you'll see your signal, your GPS signal in the upper left-hand corner, as well as your heart rate lock before you go. And then you can actually start the workout at the exact moment you want. So you can start it when you cross a starting line. Of course, this has been the norm for GPS watches for more than a decade now. Apple's just joining this trend. So like, I want to give them the credit for this, but not too much credit. The idea though being that if you're at the start of a race, or just want to ensure that you have GPS lock before you get going, this allows you to do that. In any case, once you've started this workout, you'll see the data pages like you always do. You can scroll through them using either swipe or the little digital crown there to move through them. Here's a couple pictures of some of those. None of this has really changed with the exception of adding these new data fields like the heart rate zones and the power that I talked about and showed you earlier. At the end of the workout, you can stop that workout and you'll go ahead and you'll see a very brief summary page on the Apple Watch itself. And then there's tons more data in the fitness app on your phone. And I'll give them credit. You can see way more data than you used to be able to in that fitness app now. You can see your running power and splits. You can rearrange it. You'll see your vertical oscillation. Like all that stuff is now there that wasn't necessarily there in the past. So next, let's look at the compass. The compass sounds like just a compass, but it's actually quite a bit more than that. It's also a new feature called Backtrack. So the compass has been revamped now and it has the ability to add waypoints. So I can tap on the watch, tap in the lower left-hand corner right now, add a waypoint for right here, save that waypoint, give it an icon, a color, and it'll be there forever. It's not just for that one session, it'll be there for months or years until you get around to clearing it. But in the lower right-hand corner, I can go ahead and enable Backtrack. And that basically starts as breadcrumb trail where I am. This is independent of the workout side of it, something I think Apple should reconsider. To me, if I'm starting a hike or a run, it should just start that in the background automatically. Apple counters that by noting that this automatically starts anytime you go to a low Wi-Fi area or a low signal area. Not talking about just your Wi-Fi networks, but like just Wi-Fi density of signal in general. And when it sees that you're leaving those things, it'll go ahead and enable Backtrack because it assumes you're probably going out of range. One bug I ran into though yesterday in particular was that as I went further and further away and further into my day, so now it was like 6 to 8 hours into the day and had a pretty long Backtrack trail, I stopped showing. Like it literally stopped. I got to the point in the middle of a ridge, the furthest point from civilization I could be, and it just showed blank nothingness. And that was super concerning. The good news, it turns out that's a bug. It's a super scary bug, but it's a bug that the data is still there, but the enumeration of that data is taking way longer than it should. So you think it's just empty and dead and depleted and died and whatever, but it's actually still there. Apple says that bug is going to be fixed pretty shortly here in the next release. So hopefully that gets sorted out. Again, this is all about getting back to where you were, as the name implies. It's not about navigating forward. That's really important to understand, is that as it stands today, there is no navigation function natively on the Apple Watch, meaning I could not load a course for yesterday. For my entire navigation, this whole trek through the mountains, I had to use my Garmin watch to do that. There's no way to do it on the Apple Watch natively. I could use third-party apps. For example, Work Outdoors is a really popular one. It's got a ton of features. I mean, just an insane amount of features. But then I have to understand what the battery life of that particular app is and kind of manage my expectations accordingly. And don't get me wrong, like it's tough for Apple to boil the ocean, but these are all sort of important things. The good news is I'm pretty darn confident they understand this gap and they understand how important this navigation gap is to the core audience for this particular watch. So let's talk about the Siren, because this is genuinely super cool. So basically you can long hold on the left-hand side or you can access it a couple different ways within the watch. And the Siren goes up to 80 decibels and it basically alerts people that you're there. Meaning like if you've fallen off the trail somewhere and you're injured, you can enable a Siren and someone can find you. So a couple things. One is 80 decibels is loud, but it's not super loud. But it's not about the decibels here. It's the tone, the frequency, and all the things around it that make it really interesting. The first time I saw this demo in real life, they turned it on and I'm like, that's really not that loud. I don't think it'll be heard that far away, but whatever, sure. Then I went out and actually tested it. And so here is this morning, I turned it on, I put it on a little like log or whatever, and then I walked about 300 meters away and I could still hear it super clearly. So we're talking almost 1,000 feet away and I could hear it incredibly clearly despite all the background noise of like a highway that was off in the distance and echoing through the valley and everything. No problems. And in particular, it's because of the chirp. So basically it has this kind of frequency. I'll let you listen to it right now. And then it goes into Morse code SOS mode. Apple's saying the battery life on this is about 8 hours or so in this mode. You could of course turn it on or off, but again, the idea being that it's saving battery by not just broadcasting the siren the entire time, also saving your hearing. And I suspect in a calm night environment out in the wilderness, that sound would probably carry a kilometer, even a mile or more. It is so distinct and it carries so well. So kudos to Apple on this one. So let's talk about battery life. A couple different categories here. First one is like all day daily use, whatever you want to call it, standby watch use, etc. Apple claims 36 hours in regular mode. In my testing, I went easily 48 hours, and that includes 2 GPS runs about an hour each, or GPS activities about an hour each, as well as just like an indoor workout about 45 minutes or something. They claim if you put it in low power mode, you get up to 60 hours in the standby mode. Low power mode basically reduces the frequency of the cellular signals. It reduces some background checks around heart rate conditions and reduces the background heart rate recording as well, the optical heart rate sensor, for non-workout usage. However, in workout mode, that heart rate and and GPS goes to full fidelity. And there's been some confusion on this, but let me be really clear. In workout mode, that goes to full fidelity every 1 second GPS and heart rate. So you're not losing anything from a workout standpoint, except the display is not an always on configuration. So basically you lift your wrist up, the display turns on, you put it down, it turns off. Worked just fine for me yesterday out on the hike. That's where I used the low workout mode. So at the end of my 14-hour adventure yesterday, I had 15% battery life remaining. For the vast majority of the day, because I was taking these every hour kind of checks of battery life, I was averaging between 5 and 6% battery life per hour. However, for 1 hour, it jumped 13% for no obvious reason. Not sure what's going on there. And then it got back to the 5 or 6%. So point being, based on just yesterday, I could have achieved about 17 hours of GPS, full fidelity GPS battery life. Backtrack was on in the background as well. If I didn't have the 13% jump, then you're probably talking about 20 hours of GPS battery life. However, coming later on this year, Apple's introducing another low power workout mode. And in that workout mode, it'll reduce the GPS as well as the heart rate signals to save you more battery power. They haven't specified what that'll be yet, but I suspect it's gonna be a crap ton. I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna double or triple the battery life estimates for GPS mode. We'll have to see what happens down the road there, but just knowing what other companies do, that's sort of my guess on where that ends up. So at this point, speaking of heart rate and GPS, let's dive into the accuracy of that data. So first up, we have an interval run, and honestly, it's perfect against its chest strap as well as other optical sensors. So instead, let's look at this GPS track right here. Now, the main thing I want to look at is any cutting the corners, and no problems there. So let's go into this downtown corridor full of tall buildings. On the bottom two passes, the first bottom one is really, really good. The second one is also really, really good from the Apple Watch, less so from the others. But this third one here, this isn't so strong from any of them. They kind of missed it, but these are super tall buildings, and more importantly, they're super tight together. Next, another boringly perfect heart rate chart. You see that one line in the middle there? That's when the Apple Watch restarted, but the accuracy I saw in that was astoundingly good. So on to an open water swim, and yeah, that doesn't look good. So zooming in here, you see that every single time I paused to tread water or just put my wrist under the water for just a few seconds, it lost the GPS plot entirely. Meanwhile, a couple tough cliff sections from the hike last night, yesterday, and things are really, really good between all these units. Even in the toughest conditions, they are all right next to each other. And when I look at the elevation accuracy, they're all within about 5 to 7 meters, which is pretty darn astounding. Okay, so where are we kind of at the end of things? Well, it's a very good start. And I say start, and I'll explain why in just a second. It is by far the best Apple Watch experience to date, especially for the athlete. For example, if you want the longer battery life, it delivers. If you want the precision start, it's there. If you want to do recreational diving, it's there. Apple's just taking these little chunks of the pie from other people and putting it in here. It's not the best at every one of those things, but it's good enough for a lot of people. However, if we start talking deep athletic kind of stuff, the ultra crowd, the triathlon crowd, all this stuff, there's a lot of shortcomings. And I think you gotta kind of bucketize them into 3 core areas. And I got my notes here so I don't forget it. First are the bugs. For example, the open water swim bug with the data being wonky and stuff like that, or the backtrack not showing. Those are things that I think Apple will fix. In the case of the open water swim bug, almost every open water swim capable watch over the years has had bugs similar to that at time. I'm not worried about that. Apple's had exceptionally good open water swim accuracy over the years, so I think they'll fix that, and they've committed to fixing the compass thing. So that's that category. So then we got the bucket of the missing features. That's things like the navigational side of it or the lack of sensors, etc. These are core things for those particular audiences. If I'm out doing this trek again, I have to have navigation. It's absolutely required. If you look at things like sensor support for triathlon. Again, other apps support sensors but don't support multi-sport mode. Those are things that if Apple really wants to appeal to these crowds, they've simply just got to add them in. It's as basic as that. And then there's the directional things that I think Apple needs to pause, stop, step back, and figure out how does this watch differ from their other watches in terms of their target audience. For example, there's no way I should be able to ever stop a workout and save that workout just via touch. I should have the option to say, I must press the button, I must confirm it, like every other watch in the endurance sports crowd. Unfortunately, yesterday at the 4-hour market, my watch ended my workout. I had to start another one because I forgot to relock it for a second, and then just a couple seconds later, it had ended the workout and I had to start again. And that goes beyond just ending a workout. There was numerous times, if I did not lock it, that I would find this watch off doing crazy things. At one point, it was trying to clear my entire backtrack. Another point, it was trying to start a different run, like while I was in the first run. And again, I get that Apple's at the beginning of their journey, but I think they really need to look at some of these things and using it in tougher environments, because right now it's just too cumbersome to use in those tougher environments. For the rest of the day, it's awesome, and I think it's a great watch. It's, you know, obviously the best smartwatch out there. I don't think there's any like debate about that. In terms of smartwatches, Apple's got the best smarts for day-to-day use. Still, I would not want to be in their competitors' shoes. Not so much today. Today, I wouldn't be all that worried, but about a year from now, 18 months from now, 2 years from now, once they start adding all these features and really fine-tuning this watch to these crowds, that's when the competitors are gonna have some issues. Anyways, hopefully you found this video interesting and useful. If so, give it a like at the bottom there, or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. Have a good one.